want to go over how to defend against a two-hand choke up against a hard surface. Now this could be a wall, car, fence, window. It doesn't matter if somebody has you pinned up against the neck. Now before we show you what to do, I want to show you what not to do in these situations. So for this, I have Cash as always, but the reason I want to actually do this on him is because he's got reach over me. He's taller, he's longer than me, but I've got size on him. So I want to kind of go over two things that people always tend to say when they see chokes. Number one is I'm just going to jab them in the eyes, and number two is they're going to start prying off my fingers. So because Cash has a length, what I want to do is I'm just going to start putting pressure on the choke. I'm going to start off nice and easy. I'm going to continuously tighten the choke a little by little by little. He's just going to try to poke my eyes or start peeling the fingers. That's all he's going to focus on doing, and we're going to see if it works. Peel the fingers. It's still not something that you can depend on. Now, even with the eye jabs, right? We're not going to kill Cash anymore, but even with the eye jabs, go ahead, right? It can still work. Like, he has the range where he can start digging those fingers in, but it's real easy for me to just kind of like tuck my head and drive my body into him and just start kind of putting this pressure. So again, if you're dependent upon the ability, if I would jab them in the face and just rip their eyes out of the socket, it's not going to do you very well. Same thing with the finger pries. Now, the reason again we're doing this is I've got strength on Cash. If I'm squeezing him like this, if you can get a finger and start pulling on that, yeah, that hand's coming off. But if you have someone that's got meaty hands or they just have a strong grip, it's gonna be very difficult to get those fingers, again, before you get choked out. Now, the other thing that we didn't implement in any of this is I'm also not just gonna hang out here as you're prying my fingers, right? As he's doing this, I'm not just gonna sit here and watch. There's a good chance I'm gonna let go and just hit you, or I might now lift you up a little bit, or I might kind of slam you into the wall a little bit more. So I'm going to start kind of implementing other things, which again, you internet people that just type away eye jabs and finger peels tend to forget. So now let's go over what we should be doing in this situation. Now, first things first, kind of like the infamous saying, especially when it comes to like jujitsu stuff, right? How do I get out of this position? Well, don't get there in the first place, right? Typically when it comes like these chokes, it's gonna kind of be in a situation where they might be slapping you around a little bit, kind of pushing you, and you're just kind of like, oh, what, stop, leave me alone. And then they just grab you on the throat and lift you up against the wall like this, right? If I'm reacting fast enough, if we kind of backtrack a little bit before we get into that position, if I'm kind of here, now typically bad guys aren't gonna have their hands up, protect themselves. They're gonna be kind of flailing the arms around, puffing their chest, slapping me, pushing me. So it might even be one where I kind of like push them back a little bit, like, you know, back off, and they're just gonna clear those hands and come in. So if I am able to react fast enough and just acknowledge I'm in a bad situation, maybe I literally grab their shirt, pull them in, slam my head into their face, maybe drop an elbow, rip them down to the ground, and we work to get out of there. I can literally also just kind of throw a quick punch or throw a kick to the groin and just use that as an opening to kind of clear that distance. So those are just like preemptive things that you can do. I can also, the moment he pushes me up against the wall, if I'm reacting fast enough before he's like really settled and started driving in, if he initially slams me, I might also be able to kind of just pluck those arms off right away. But again, the moment I would pluck those arms, I need to start kind of following up a strike. So there's always things that you can do. There's levels of self-defense. It's never just like 0 to the most difficult position. There's the preemptive, there's the initial grabs, and then everything's just gonna get more and more difficult the longer you take. So just, again, keep that stuff in mind. Now we're on the worst of the worst. He's got you pinned, he's locked in, he's doing what he needs to do. Now notice the same thing. If I start reaching for his eyes, it's easy for him to tuck his head. He might actually bring his head in closer, which is what I did in that situation. So if you wanna start by reaching for here, and they start bringing their head in closer, then maybe what I'm gonna do is actually grab their head and pull their head in tight. And now what this does is it prevents him from being able to like physically choke me, because now I'm just cranking down on his head and I'm holding out nice and tight. So one thing that may happen is he starts actually pulling himself back and away. And if I feel him pulling himself away, I'm actually going to follow him with it a little bit and use that as an opportunity to get off the wall. The other thing I can do from here as well, because I already have him pulled in, I can resort to biting if you want to bite. Just, you know, be careful of, you know, what bacteria you might be getting in yourself after that. But I also have the ability to start pulling on his hair. I can start now jabbing and driving my fingers into his eyes. So because he's naturally bringing his head closer to me, I'm going to take advantage of that type of situation. And then as always, I can also drop close quarter elbows. We're just simply kind of talking upper body right now. I also have the ability to, again, attack the legs. Understand though that if we're going for like groin strikes, for instance, this is not something that's guaranteed to end the fight as well, but it could also buckle them. So even from this position, I could throw kicks or knees to the groin. But even from back here, when he initially grabs me like this, if I'm kind of just panicking, again, you don't know what you're going to do till you're in that situation. So if I'm just kind of panicking, maybe I throw a kick to the groin that's going to buckle him a little bit. Maybe it's going to loosen up one of the grips that now I can pluck that, grab him, clear him out of the way, and we can go from there. But again, just like the eye jabs and the finger peels, this is not something where you should be like, Yitzhak! And then expect the fight to be completely over. I have to just anticipate that this might just kind of buckle them a little bit, and I can use that as an opportunity to get away. The other big question that we get from these positions is size difference, right? Again, jabs and everything are there. Don't depend on it. So the thing I want to focus on is now starting to kind of like isolate these grips. Now, because they're typically have you flatten up against the wall, I can try throwing punches to rattle them or to loosen up a grip, but again, my mobility is going to be limited depending on how much he's driving me up into the wall. One thing I do want to do in general, drop my weight a little bit, start kind of using the wall. Now I can strike and try to reach him and then just try to collapse this arm just to again bring him in closer to where I can now start again looking to scoop the head in like a tie clinch of some sort, and again we can start working off the wall that way. Or if there's a big size disparity, I want to focus and hyper focus on one arm. So if I want to focus on one arm, and even if there's not a big size discrepancy, it's just something that's makes it a little bit easier on me. But again, if this person's taller than bigger than you, instead of me trying to focus size to size, I'm going to put my entire body onto one limb, which again is typically going to work in my favor. So the way that I want to do this is again try to work whatever strikes you can, but I'm going to bring one arm up to the middle, one arm to the outside. I'm going to grab my hands together. I'm going to collapse on the elbow, and as I collapse on the elbow, I'm going to start shifting my body the same direction so that we're facing the same way. And as I do that, there's a good chance I'm going to get this person to break free like this. Now, most likely you'll free this arm even if this hand's still up on your neck. It's not going to do much from here, but I have tons of options at this point. I can just now start working strikes and use this to work off the wall. I can literally slam them into the wall, turn them into the wall, and now safely work myself off. If you're feeling fancy or if you've got some grappling experience from here, I can just switch this grip to the arm, drag them through, and we go out the back door. So one other side note with that is that when I'm also collapsing this, I want to make sure I drop my body weight at the same time. Again, use as much of your body as possible to just completely nullify this grip as a whole. But in general, self-defense, again, there's always layers. It's not 0 to 100. There's gonna be like the preemptive of like, dude, what's your problem, man? What's your problem, right? What's your problem? And then I'm just gonna come up and I'm gonna grab. But Cash has all these opportunities here where I'm just kind of pushing him to kind of defend himself, right? Oh, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do, huh? I'm not just gonna go from like here to this. There's gonna be something in between, and if he's aware of that, then he can very well kind of block it. He can do what he needs to do. Again, he can grab and pull me in and throw headbutt, or he can kick me, he can punch me, so there's gonna be layers to that. And then same thing, once he initially gets those grips on, I can pry those arms off right away. I can do what I need to do before things get too difficult. So just understand in general, there's always gonna be layers of self-defense. There's always gonna be size discrepancies, and there's nothing wrong with doing something such as eye jabs, finger pokes, finger peels, but just know in the grand scheme of things, it's gonna be very difficult to do under live pressure before you get put to sleep. So practice this, try and train with different people, different sizes, so you know what does and doesn't work, and we'll see you next time. Stay safe.